A week before our wedding, my fiancée joked that I was her financial safety net. So I froze our joint account and let her try to pay for the $45,000 wedding herself. The guests arrived to find an empty ballroom and a printed copy of her texts on every table. Today, 43 missed calls. Hey there. We're working hard to hit our first 1,000 subscribers. If you love true, emotional stories, hit that subscribe button. It helps more than you know. Now let's get into the story. I always thought the worst thing you could hear before your wedding was, "I can't do this." Turns out, it's way worse hearing, "He's just my financial safety net," said in a voice full of laughter, and realizing they were talking about you. It happened 6 days before the wedding. We were at her parents' place, tying up some last-minute things. Seating charts, vendors, the usual pre-wedding madness. I was in the backyard, trying to patch some spotty Wi-Fi for her dad. They were inside, my fiancée, Melissa, and her sister, talking like no one else was around. I didn't mean to overhear. The window was open. My hands were buried in cables. I caught her voice clear as day. "Don't worry. Worst case, I'm set for life now. Jake's basically a walking wallet with a heartbeat," she joked, laughing so hard, she actually snorted. Her sister laughed too. "Well, at least he's good for something." I didn't move. Couldn't. The whole backyard felt like it tilted sideways. They went on. God, they kept going. Honestly, I thought about calling it off, but $45,000 for one day? Nah, I'll play nice for now. After the wedding, who knows? They both laughed again. I stared at the router in my hand, suddenly not remembering what I was even fixing. My chest felt tight. I waited for the punchline. For Melissa to say, "Come on, you know I love him." Some kind of defense. It never came. Instead, her sister said, "Just make sure you don't sign anything stupid after the wedding. Keep your options open." Melissa, "Oh, I'm not an idiot." There's a moment when you hear something you're not supposed to, where your body instinctively tells you pretend you didn't. Smile. Nod. Keep going. Because if you acknowledge it, your whole life detonates. I wish I could say I was brave, that I marched inside, demanded answers, broke it off on the spot. Instead, I quietly finished the Wi-Fi fix. I smiled through dinner. I drove home with her that night, feeling like my skin didn't fit right anymore. She leaned over at a stoplight, kissed my cheek, and said, "Almost there, babe. Just a few more days." I stared straight ahead, hands tightening on the steering wheel until my knuckles went pale. The next day, I told her I needed to work late. I needed air. Space. I needed to figure out who the hell I was really marrying, and if I could stomach pretending for even one more second. But a voice kept whispering in the back of my mind, dark and cold, "She doesn't love you. You're a paycheck." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, piecing together every little moment that hadn't made sense before. The times she brushed off my questions about the budget. The way she always pushed for the more expensive venue, the premium packages, the endless guest list because it's just once in a lifetime. How she never talked about the marriage itself, just the wedding. And once you start pulling one thread, the whole fabric unravels. The next morning, I went digging. I told Melissa I was slammed with work that night. She smiled, kissed me goodbye, and said, "Don't overdo it, okay? We need you fresh for the big day." Then she left, probably to go to her mom's or meet up with her sister. I didn't even ask. I sat there in the apartment we were supposed to be moving out of in a week, staring at the untouched takeout on the coffee table, feeling like a stranger in my own life. Maybe I could have left it alone. Maybe I could have just believed I overheard one bad joke, one stupid, awful joke, and convinced myself she didn't mean it. But that seed of doubt had already been planted, and it was growing roots fast. I started small, checking her social media messages. Nothing. Scrolling through her Instagram DMs, clean. Even her email, boring wedding newsletters and junk. For a second, I almost felt guilty. But then I remembered the way she laughed when she called me a walking wallet. And that guilt burned up fast. It wasn't until I opened her laptop that I found it. An old Messenger tab still logged in. Probably forgotten. A conversation with her best friend, Tara. At first, it was harmless enough. Gossip, bridal stress, complaints about seating charts. But the further I scrolled, the uglier it got. Tara. So what happens after you lock it down? Melissa, who knows? Depends if someone better comes along, lol. At least if he stays boring, I'm financially set. Tara. You could always keep him for a year or two and upgrade later, haha. Melissa, exactly. He's not forever. He's just a great investment. Investment. She called me an investment. I couldn't breathe for a second. I stared at the screen like maybe if I blinked enough times, the words would rearrange themselves into something kinder, something forgivable. But no, it got worse. Tara, bet he thinks he won the jackpot LMAO. Melissa, oh, he's head over heels. Poor thing. Poor thing. I leaned back in the chair, numb. And then, final twist of the knife, I saw the date stamp on one of the earlier messages. They'd been joking about this for months. Long before the engagement party. Long before she said yes with tears in her eyes. Hell, even before she dropped hints about getting married. All of it. Every romantic dinner, every late-night whisper about our future, rehearsed. A performance. It wasn't a slip-up. It was the plan. I don't know how long I sat there. I just remember feeling this cold, precise thing settle inside me, like a wire snapping tight. There wasn't going to be a wedding. Not the way she imagined. Not anymore. But if she wanted to treat me like an investment, fine. She was about to learn what happens when a bad investment pulls out right before the deal closes. The next morning, I called out sick. Melissa was already at her dress fitting, so I had the apartment to myself. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my coffee, thinking about how fast a dream could rot into a nightmare. I didn't want a screaming match. I didn't want to be the guy who blew up in public, threw a tantrum, begged her for answers. That would just give her more ammunition. I wanted something cleaner, smarter. Final. The first call I made was to the bank. We had opened a joint wedding account a few months earlier, supposed to be used strictly for wedding expenses. She contributed a little. I contributed a lot. Because that's what love is, right? Trust? The woman on the line confirmed what I feared. The account was almost empty. How much is left? I asked, my voice weirdly calm. About $950, she said after checking. Out of nearly $45,000. Gone. When I asked for a transaction history, she emailed it over. Spa days. Designer shoes. Lavish brunches. Jewelry. Not wedding stuff. Not bills. Stuff for her. It wasn't even subtle. While I was working overtime to pay for this dream day, she had been treating herself like a queen on my dime. I stared at the spreadsheet, something inside me quietly snapping. There was just one saving grace. The final venue payment hadn't cleared yet. That was supposed to come out of the account 2 days before the wedding. Meaning, if I acted fast enough, I could stop it. I booked a meeting with a lawyer that afternoon. Found a guy who specialized in premarital finance disputes. He wasn't cheap, but he was very interested once I explained the situation. You're still technically engaged, he said, meaning no marital property has been established yet. You can absolutely withdraw or freeze any account with your name on it, especially if you suspect misuse of funds. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Of course, if you want to make a statement, there are other ways to do it. And that's when the real plan started to take shape. Not petty revenge. Not some furious blow-up she could twist into making me look bad. No, I was going to let her hang herself, with her own words. Over the next 2 days, I made my moves carefully. First, I froze the joint account. Locked it so no new transactions could go through without both our signatures. Next, I contacted every major vendor. The florist, the venue, the caterers, the DJ. I didn't cancel. I just quietly informed them that payments might be delayed due to unexpected circumstances, and that under no circumstances was anyone authorized to pay them from the joint account. Most were confused. Some were annoyed. I smiled and apologized, promising updates soon. Then came the most delicate part. I took the screenshots of Melissa's texts, every ugly laugh, every cruel joke, every plan to upgrade after the wedding, and formatted them into a neat, printed packet. 50 copies. One for every table at the wedding. The last thing I did was cancel the lease for the new apartment we were supposed to move into after the honeymoon. It was under my name. She thought we were co-signing after the wedding. Surprise. By the end of that 3rd day, everything was in place. Melissa was still floating around town in a blissed-out cloud, posting dress selfies, tweeting about how fairy tales do come true, oblivious to the storm brewing inches from her face. She had no idea the walls were already crumbling behind her, and I wasn't going to save her when they fell. The morning before the wedding, Melissa woke up early, buzzing with excitement. She danced around the kitchen barefoot, humming along to some stupid wedding playlist, stealing sips of my coffee like nothing was wrong. "Can you believe it's tomorrow?" she grinned. I smiled back, kissed her forehead, and told her I had a few errands to run. She had no idea those errands included walking into the bank and flipping the final switch. It took 20 minutes. Just some paperwork, a quick conversation with the branch manager. And just like that, our joint account was officially frozen. Every dollar trapped, unavailable. Melissa wouldn't find out until she tried to use the wedding card at the venue later that night for the final walkthrough. Meanwhile, I had one last delivery to make. I dropped the packets, the printed conversations, with a buddy of mine who owed me a favor. Told him to deliver them to the hotel staff the next morning with clear instructions. Place one packet on every table. Before guests arrive. Non-negotiable. He didn't even ask questions. He just nodded, stuffed the manila envelopes in his car, and drove off. By noon, I was back home, pretending to help Melissa pack for the honeymoon. She giggled as she folded dresses into suitcases, chatting about beach resorts and spa days. I listened, answering in short, tight sentences, feeling like a ghost in my own body. It was the cruelest part, honestly. Watching her talk about our future like she hadn't gutted it already. Like she hadn't spent the last 6 months laughing behind my back. Around 5 p.m., she left for the venue. Final walkthrough with the coordinator, quick payment, last checks. An hour later, I got the call. She didn't even bother hiding her rage. Jake, what the hell is going on? The cards declined. They're threatening to cancel the reservation. They said they never got the final payment. Her voice cracked under the pressure, a tiny, shrill edge creeping into it. I leaned back in my chair, phone pressed loosely against my ear, staring out at the city lights blinking outside our window. Must be a banking error, I said, keeping my voice as calm as possible. You should probably figure it out. You need to call them. Now. This is your fault. I could almost hear the panic bleeding through her words, raw and ugly. Can't, I said. Busy. And I hung up. 40 seconds later, the first wave of texts hit. Call me. I'm serious. This isn't funny. The hotel wants their money, Jake. Where is the money? I turned my phone off. Then I poured myself a drink and sat on the balcony, watching the city buzz below me, feeling something strange and cold and satisfying settle in my chest. Melissa was a planner, a controller. She'd spun this entire wedding out of dreams stitched together with my money, my time, my faith. And now, right when everything was supposed to be perfect, it was all slipping through her fingers. Tomorrow would be worse. Much worse. And for once, I wasn't the one left scrambling. The morning of the wedding, the sky was a perfect, heartless blue. Melissa didn't sleep much. I heard her pacing the apartment until 2 in the morning, whispering furiously on the phone to her sister and mother, trying to fix the venue payment disaster. When I finally got up around 6, she was curled on the couch, still in yesterday's clothes, mascara smudged under her eyes. Jake, she said, voice hoarse. We need to talk. I pulled on my jacket, grabbed my keys. Not now, I said. You'll be late. Before she could argue, I was out the door. I didn't need to see the meltdown. I had a different front row seat reserved. By noon, guests had started to arrive at the hotel ballroom. Family, friends, her coworkers, people dressed in their finest, clutching gifts, smiling in anticipation. Only, when they stepped into the reception hall, they found no string quartet playing love songs. No champagne being passed around. No bride. No groom. Just round tables, neatly set with crisp white linens. And at the center of every table, a printed packet. Some people sat, confused, flipping open the pages. Some stood frozen, faces tightening with every line they read. A murmur started to ripple across the room. Then gasps. Whispers sharp enough to cut. Parents pulling their kids closer. Friends exchanging horrified glances. There, in black and white, were the receipts. Melissa mocking me, calling me a wallet, planning her exit strategy before she even said, I do. Every cruel word, every laugh, every plan to upgrade, once she secured the wedding gifts and honeymoon photos for Instagram. I stood just outside the main entrance, tucked behind a column, watching it unfold. I saw Melissa arrive, still in her bathrobe and messy hair, dragging her maid of honor by the hand. She froze at the doorway, face going sheet white as she took in the scene. At first, she didn't move. Then she bolted inside, grabbing at the packets, tearing them off the tables, crumpling them in her fists, screaming at the hotel staff. But it was too late. People were already filming. Whispers were already turning into open disgust. Her father stormed up to her, veins bulging in his neck, waving a crumpled printout in her face. Her mother burst into tears. Friends were quietly edging toward the doors, clutching their coats, whispering apologies to no one in particular. And me? I slipped away before she even noticed I was there. My phone exploded in my pocket, buzzing nonstop with calls and texts. Melissa, her mom, her maid of honor, her aunt, even random numbers I didn't recognize. 43 missed calls by the time I got home. I sat in the living room, staring at the growing list, feeling nothing, really. Not triumph, not rage, just a strange, quiet sense of closure. The same way you feel when you finally put down something heavy you didn't even realize you'd been carrying. Melissa sent one final text around 7 p.m. You ruined me. How could you do this? Please call me. Please. I turned my phone off, dropped it face down on the coffee table, and poured myself another drink. The sun dipped low, painting the skyline blood orange. Tomorrow, the fallout would begin in earnest. The blame games, the sob stories, the desperate attempts to salvage her reputation. But none of that would be my problem. Not anymore. The next morning, I woke up to silence. No frantic knocking at the door. No new messages or voicemails. Just the muted hum of the city waking up without me being dragged into someone else's disaster. I made coffee, sat by the window, and watched the sun slice through the buildings like a blade. It felt almost obscene, how normal the world looked after everything had collapsed. My email was full. Wedding cancellations, relatives demanding explanations, mutual friends trying to stay neutral. I deleted them all without opening a single one. I didn't owe anyone anything anymore, least of all Melissa. Later that day, a friend sent me a screenshot of a long, weepy Facebook post she made. She called it a tragic misunderstanding, blamed vindictive forces, said she was working through her pain. No mention of the texts. No mention of the receipts laid out like confetti at what was supposed to be our big day. Just vague sadness and a carefully filtered selfie for sympathy. Predictable. I blocked her on every platform. Changed my number 2 days later. Moved out of the apartment by the end of the week, leaving no forwarding address. Melissa tried to find me once. I heard through a friend that she showed up at my old office, asking around. I wasn't there anymore. New job, new city, new life. Every so often, someone would mention seeing her at bars downtown, a little louder than she used to be, a little sloppier, still telling people about the one that got away, painting herself as the wounded party. I never corrected the record. Some truths don't need defending. And anyway, it didn't matter. I was free. Free from the games, the lies, the endless dance of pretending we were something real when the foundation was rotted from the start. Funny, in a way. She was right. I had been her safety net, the thing she planned to fall back on while she chased something shinier. But she forgot something important about safety nets. Sometimes they get cut. Sometimes you fall, and no one catches you. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.